Democratic Alliance leader Mmusi Maimane will contest the 2024 general elections. Now today in Naledi, Soweto, he and his team launched a new political party, Build One South Africa. Let's get a sense of how the new kid on the block is planning to persuade the electorate. We're now joined by Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, the deputy leader of Build One South Africa. Very good evening to you. Welcome to Newzroom Afrika. Thank you for your time. You're a businesswoman. Just starting off with you, you're a businesswoman, you're an author, you're passionate about women development and empowerment, the economic and social development. Why team up with Build One South Africa? What more do you bring to the table?
So first of all, good evening and thank you for having me. Look, I think I speak for many South Africans when I say that we are at a place in our country where it's very clear that there are numerous crises that we face. We're in a place in our country where many South Africans are in despair. I'm a South African leader, I'm an active South African. And I got to a place where I realized that, quite honestly, there was no one coming to save us. And it was important that as a South African, I put up my hand to serve South Africa and to address some of the issues that I find to be very problematic in the country, some of the issues that have really left our communities, ourselves, at a place where it's clear that if we don't come in and do something, there'll be no country to actually speak of in the coming years.
So a lot of ambitious targets and bold statements were made today by your leader, Mmusi Maimane. Jobs in every home, fixing the economy. How else are you planning to persuade the electorate? Because the elections are tough and you have to make sure that you're speaking to the right South Africans and that you're able to deliver on your promises.
So first off, there's the policy issues that you speak of. When we speak of jobs in every home, our approach really is to kind of reactivate township economies. Our approach is to restore township economies, make sure that there are working businesses, make sure that young people are entrepreneurial and have got an enabling environment and have got the skills and the resources to be able to build businesses. First of all, where they live. That's how you get an economy revived again, and that's how you get young people active in the economy. That's how you get people working again. You speak of, how we differentiate ourselves and how we make voters believe in us. Well, voters are us. The difference with Build One South Africa is that we want homegrown leadership. We want communities to be the one who nominate leaders in their own constituencies, in their own communities, and for them to say, this is a leader that is doing the work in my community. This is a leader that I want to see in Parliament. Now, that is something that's different, and I think that is something that will definitely convince South African voters come 2024, because it will be about them, it will be about taking power, and it is about taking power back to them, and it is about them making sure that they have the people who will serve them in Parliament.
As you speak about Parliament, we know that Parliament's been accused of dragging its feet when it comes to the 2020 Constitutional Court order on amending the Electoral Act. How much pressure are you going to be putting on government and Parliament to ensure that those amendments are indeed made?
We will continue. You remember this work started with the One South Africa movement, of which Mmusi Maimane was chief activist, and we will continue with that work. The One SA movement will continue with that work. But in Parliament, as BOSA, we will continue to put pressure on Parliament to be able to give South African citizens their right, which is to fully participate as independents in Parliament and in government and in the elections. So we absolutely will be continuing to put that pressure on, because it is the right of South Africans, and it is ultimately how you give full power back to South Africans and back to communities.
Yeah. As you and I speak, we're right in the middle of load shedding, the rolling blackouts, which have really just frustrated South Africans. In fact, a happiness index speaks to one of the major factors that are making South Africans unhappy and angry. It's load shedding. How are you looking at tackling load shedding and adding your voice too? We have seen some developments in the past few days working towards ending the crisis. We're talking about a long-term plan of at least 24 months. What do you think needs to happen?
So I think that one starts with political will. and the intention of leaders and the intention of government to actually fix the problem. I think that what we've seen over the past 8 years and more are promises to fix the problem. What we have seen are commitments to fix the problem, but then we haven't seen the kind of action and the kind of will to see that through. So I think it starts with the intention, and secondly, it starts with efficient government. So intention is important and political will is important, but having the right people in the job at every area of government is very, very important. And so as you'll see, as you've said yourself, I myself, as deputy leader of BOSA, am a business person, I'm a leader, and our intention is to make sure that the people who are part of the organization, the people who get appointed in government once we're in government, are people who are efficient, are people who know how to do the work, are people who have proven that they actually know what they're doing.
Throughout the ANC elective conferences, we saw some complaints coming out on the ratio and the balance when it comes to leadership, that there was an imbalance because there are more male leaders than women. As the deputy leader of Build One South Africa, what do you bring when it comes to leadership as a woman, and rightfully so, because of the imbalances that we see in politics?
So if you were watching our launch today, you will have seen that there's a balance. That's something that is very important to us. We want to make sure we call ourselves Build One South Africa because we want to make sure that there is representation and that every South African, regardless of gender, regardless of age, finds a place in South Africa. It's particularly important that women are represented because actually the issues that we have in South Africa affect women the most. Women are the ones who are affected most by crime. Women are the ones who ultimately get affected the most because they generally head up households, and the statistics tell us that it is women who head up households more in South Africa than men. And so it's very important that women are represented, and we've made that part of our policies and part of how we work in our governance to make sure that there is representation. It's also important to us that we have youth representation because we need fresh talent, because we need new solutions to the issues in South Africa and to driving and building South Africa forward. It's something that's very important to us to have that representation, not just for representation's sake, but because we need the minds and the voices of diverse South Africans.
Looking at the last local government elections, we saw that the outcome wasn't as great as it has been in the past, and undecided voters perhaps opting to stay home and not make their mark because they don't believe in some of the leaders and rather chose to stay home. How are you going to be speaking and wooing voters to become one with Build One South Africa?
The first thing is that voters need to know that this is something different and this is something new. And that's something that we're not only going to say, it's something that we're going to live. It's something that will be clear to voters even come 2024 from the work that starts immediately now. I think that wooing voters, I mean, we've said often that, and we've seen that you have promises that are made by politicians and by political parties that are not delivered on. And so for us, what's important is that we make sure that we're working with leaders in communities on the projects that they're working on to resolve issues in their communities, to build their communities so that we start the work. We've started the work. The kind of candidates that we have started the work. And that is how we woo South Africans. We actually do the work. More work and less promises.
What does the new democratic progression look like? We heard Mmusi Maimane speaking about it today, just speaking about going and doing away with the post-liberation politics and just rethinking the nature of politics.
I think that the nature of politics now actually looks like people. It looks like taking power back to the people. I think that the nature of politics now looks like policies that address the real issues that people have. It looks like policies, I mean, one of the things Mmusi would have spoken about today was about making sure that people are able to participate fully in democracy and people are able to participate fully, for instance, in the economy. And that's what it looks like now. It looks like making sure that the policies that we develop ensure that power is taken back to the people. Even in economy, it looks like I spoke earlier about owning businesses. We can't have ownership of businesses that is limited to the elites in South Africa. That's what it looks like.
Where does the Build One South Africa stand when it comes to the immigration issues and the build-up that we've been having, especially looking at the ZEP and that extension and the talk about illegal foreign nationals in South Africa?
It looks like an efficient government that's able to implement and manage border control. It looks like making sure that anybody who is an immigrant in South Africa is here legally. And it also looks like relationships with neighboring countries and with countries internationally to make sure that, particularly when it comes to African countries, when it comes to SADC countries, we are partnering with and we are working with those countries, and we are making sure that their own democracies are the kind of democracies that allow their inhabitants and their citizens to be able to live and build in their countries. So that's what it looks like for us. It looks like making sure that our relationships support and our allies to pro-democracy candidates in those countries, and to making sure that those countries are the kind of places that citizens can live in and build in and grow in.
Very well. Perhaps let's leave it there for now. Thank you for your time. Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, the Deputy Leader of Build One South Africa.